Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I need to tell you about something that happened to me 3 months ago. Something that still makes me check my locks twice before bed and avoid Uber rides after midnight. My name is Sarah, and I work in marketing here in Portland, Oregon. What I'm about to share with you, well, the police didn't believe me. My friends think I was just drunk and paranoid. But I know what I experienced that night, and I need to get it out of my head. It was my college roommate's wedding reception at the McMenamins Kennedy School. Beautiful venue, open bar, and I may have celebrated a little too hard. By 1 a.m. I was exhausted, slightly tipsy, and ready to go home to my apartment in southeast Portland. Should have been a simple 20-minute ride through the city. My phone was dying as I requested the Uber. The battery hit that critical 5% just as the driver accepted my ride. I remember thinking, great, just great, as the screen went black. But within 5 minutes, a clean black sedan pulled up. The license plate matched what I'd glimpsed on my phone before it died. The driver looked exactly like what you'd want at 1 a.m. Middle-aged guy, clean-cut, wearing a button-down shirt. Professional. Safe. He introduced himself as Marcus and helped me into the back seat with a polite smile. The car smelled like vanilla air freshener and the leather seats were spotless. I actually felt relieved. No weird odors. No concerning music, no creepy small talk. Just a quiet, professional driver who seemed eager to get me home safely. "Traffic's pretty light tonight," Marcus said as we pulled away from the venue. "I'll have you home in no time." I settled back into the seat, watching familiar Portland neighborhoods roll by through the window. The wedding had been fun, but I was ready to collapse into my own bed. That's when I noticed we'd taken an unexpected turn off Burnside Street. "Construction ahead," Marcus explained before I could ask. "GPS is routing us around it. This way's actually faster this time of night." I looked at my dead phone, wishing I could check the route myself. We were heading east, but further out than I'd ever been. The familiar glow of Portland's streetlights was fading behind us, replaced by the darker, more rural highways that led toward Mount Hood. Dense forests pressed in on both sides of the road, and I could see the occasional farmhouse light flickering through the trees. "Are you sure this is the right way?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "I've never gone this route before." Marcus glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "My GPS is more updated than the passenger app. It knows shortcuts that yours doesn't show. Trust me, I've been doing this for years." 20 minutes passed, then 30. I should have been home by now, probably already in my pajamas and washing off my makeup. Instead, I was watching unfamiliar rural Oregon scroll by outside my window. No streetlights now, just the occasional porch light from houses set way back in, the trees. The kind of places where your closest neighbor might be a mile away. That's when I realized my phone had no signal. Not even one bar. We were in some kind of dead zone, and I was completely cut off from the outside world. Marcus had started talking more, asking questions that made my skin crawl. "So do you live alone? Work late often? Got a boyfriend waiting up for you?" I gave vague, non-committal answers. The last thing I wanted was to give this stranger details about my personal life. But Marcus seemed to already know more than he should. "I've actually seen you around your building," he said casually. "Corner of 28th and Division, right? That brick complex with the blue door? I've picked up rides from there before. You usually leave for work around 8:30, come home around 6. Sometimes you stop at that little coffee shop on the corner." My blood went cold. I'd never used Uber from my apartment building before. I always walked to the main street to catch rides, and I'd definitely never seen this man or his car in my neighborhood. "How do you know where I live?" I asked, my voice sharper now. "Like I said, I've done pickups in the area. You notice patterns?" He shrugged, but his eyes in the rearview mirror had a strange intensity. "Pretty girl like you, living alone, you should be more careful about your routines." People notice. The road had become increasingly isolated. No other cars, no houses, just endless trees and darkness. I tried my phone again. Still no signal. We'd been driving for over 40 minutes now, and I had no idea where we were. That's when Marcus pulled over. "Car trouble," he said, putting the vehicle in park at what looked like an abandoned rest stop. The kind of place that probably hadn't seen maintenance in decades. But as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I realized we weren't alone. There were other vehicles parked in the shadows. A van, 2 pickup trucks, another sedan. And they weren't empty. I could see silhouettes of people sitting inside, watching our car. Marcus got out and started walking around the vehicle slowly, talking on his phone in what sounded like Russian or maybe Polish. I couldn't make out the words, but his tone had changed completely. Gone was the polite professional driver. This voice was cold, businesslike. That's when I noticed the child locks were engaged. I couldn't open the door from inside. Panic started rising in my chest. I managed to get the window down slightly. Thank God it was an older car with manual controls. Through the crack, I could hear fragments of conversation from the other vehicles. English now, talking about schedules and the next pickup and processing. One voice said, "This one's perfect. Right age. Right look. No one's expecting her until tomorrow." I don't remember making a conscious decision to break the window. Survival instinct just took over. I used my heel, a sharp stiletto from the wedding, and slammed it against the passenger side window. The glass spider-webbed, then shattered. I didn't care about the cuts on my arms as I climbed through, didn't care about anything except getting away from that car and those people. I ran straight into the woods, branches tearing at my dress, my feet stumbling in those stupid heels. Behind me, I could hear shouting, car doors slamming, engines starting, but I kept running deeper into the forest, using the moonlight to navigate between the trees. I hid in a hollow log until sunrise, shivering in my torn dress, picking glass out of my arms. When I finally emerged and found a road, the rest stop was empty. No cars, no people, no sign that any of it had happened except for the cuts on my arms and my ruined dress. The police found no record of a driver named Marcus with the license plate I remembered. When I checked my Uber account later, it showed that my ride request had been cancelled before pickup, like the trip had never happened at all. But here's the thing that still haunts me. 2 days later, I found a photo slipped under my apartment door. A photo of me getting into that black sedan, taken from across the street. On the back, someone had written, "We know where you live." I moved out of that apartment the next week, changed my phone number, started driving myself everywhere. But sometimes, late at night when I'm lying in bed, I wonder about those other cars at that rest stop. I wonder how many people got into vehicles thinking they were getting a safe ride home and just disappeared. If you're still listening, you probably enjoy stories like this. A like or a comment helps keep them alive. My name is Jake, and I used to think the worst part of bartending was dealing with drunk customers. I was wrong. The worst part was what happened to me on a Tuesday night in Denver after what should have been a routine ride home. I'd been working at Murphy's Tavern downtown for about 2 years. Same routine every night. Close up around 2:30 a.m., catch an Uber from the same corner on 16th Street, ride out to my apartment complex in Aurora. 20-minute trip through mostly empty streets, usually with tired drivers who were just as ready to call it a night as I was. That Tuesday was dead slow. Maybe 15 customers all evening, mostly regulars nursing beers and watching Sports Center. I cleaned glasses, restocked bottles, and counted down the minutes until closing. By 2:30, I was exhausted and ready to go home. I stood on my usual corner, the one with decent lighting and cell service, and requested my ride. A Honda Civic showed up within 5 minutes. Older model. Kind of beat up, but clean inside. The driver was a woman, maybe mid-40s, with short brown hair and thick glasses. She smiled when I got in. "Jake, right," she said cheerfully. "Going to the Meadowbrook Apartments?" I nodded, impressed that she'd remembered my name and destination from the app. Professional drivers usually did that. "Yeah, that's me. Thanks for picking up this late." "Oh, no problem at all," she said, pulling away from the curb. "I'm Linda, by the way. I think I've had you before, actually. You work at that Irish bar, right?" I tried to remember her face, but honestly, after 2 years of late-night Uber rides, most drivers blended together. "Yeah, Murphy's Tavern. Have we met before?" "A few times, I think. You're always so polite. Not like some of these drunk college kids I pick up." Linda adjusted her rearview mirror to get a better look at me. "How's Amy doing, by the way?" My blood went cold. Amy was my ex-girlfriend. We'd broken up 6 months ago, and it hadn't been pleasant. More importantly, I'd never mentioned her name to any Uber driver. Ever. "I'm sorry, what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Amy, your girlfriend. Last time I drove you, you were talking about some argument you'd had. About her wanting to move in together or something." Linda's tone was casual, like she was asking about the weather. "I think you have me confused with someone else," I said carefully. "Amy and I broke up months ago, and I definitely haven't talked to any drivers about her." Linda laughed, a sound that didn't match the expression in her eyes as they watched me in the mirror. "Oh, that's right. You guys did break up. I remember now. She moved in with that Derek guy, right? The one who works at the bank?" I'd never told anyone Derek's name. Hell, I'd only found out about him 2 weeks ago when I'd seen them together at a coffee shop. How could this woman possibly know that? "How do you know about Derek?" I asked, my voice sharper now. "Know about who?" Linda asked innocently, but I caught her small smile in the rearview mirror. That's when I noticed we'd driven past my apartment complex without stopping. "Hey, you missed the turn," I said, twisting around to look back at the Meadowbrook sign receding behind us. "Oh, GPS glitched," Linda said without slowing down. "I'll loop around, no problem." But instead of turning around, she kept driving deeper into the residential neighborhoods west of my complex. Streets I'd never seen before, lined with modest single-family homes with dark windows and overgrown yards. "This is taking us further away," I pointed out. "My place is back that way." "I know a shortcut," Linda said. She started pointing out houses as we drove. "See that blue house with the white fence? That's where the Morrison family lives. Ted works at the post office. Janet stays home with their 3 kids. They fight every Thursday night around 9 p.m. Something about money, usually." I stared at her. "How do you know that? And that yellow house there?" "Single mum, works night shifts at the hospital. Leaves her twin boys with her mother on weekends so she can go to that sports bar on Colfax. She's sleeping with her supervisor, but her ex-husband doesn't know yet." Linda's voice had taken on a strange, detached quality, like she was reciting facts from a file. She slowed down in front of the yellow house and pointed to a specific window. "That's the boys' room. They keep a nightlight on, little lamp shaped like a dinosaur. The older one, Marcus, he's afraid of thunderstorms. The younger one, Danny, he sleepwalks sometimes." "What the hell is wrong with you?" I demanded. "How do you know all this?" Linda didn't answer. She just kept driving, turning down street after street in a pattern that seemed random but somehow calculated. We'd been in the car for almost 40 minutes now, and I realized we'd been circling the same few blocks over and over. "I want out," I said firmly. "Stop the car and let me out." "Not yet," Linda said calmly. "I want to show you one more house first." She pulled up in front of a small ranch-style home with a red door and a neat garden. The porch light was on, and I could see warm light coming from the windows. "This is where Amy lives now," Linda said, her voice soft and almost affectionate. "With Derek. They moved in together last month. She gets up at 6:15 every morning, makes coffee, and sits by that front window for exactly 10 minutes, reading the news on her phone. Derek leaves for work at 7:45. He kisses her goodbye every morning, right there on the porch. I felt like I was going to throw up. You're stalking her." "I'm observing," Linda corrected. "There's a difference. Amy works late on Wednesdays and Fridays. Usually doesn't get home until after 8 p.m. Derek works out at that gym on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. They order Chinese food every Sunday from the place on Federal Boulevard. Always the same order: sweet and sour, chicken, beef and broccoli, 2 egg rolls." She reached into her glove compartment and pulled out a manila folder. My heart stopped when I saw my name written on the tab. "I keep files on all my regulars," Linda explained, flipping through pages covered with photos, notes, and printed screenshots. There were pictures of me leaving Murphy's Tavern, entering my apartment building, walking to the corner store. Screenshots from my Facebook and Instagram accounts. Notes about my work schedule, my routines, even my favorite breakfast spot. "Some people think I'm just a driver," Linda continued, her voice taking on a dreamy quality. "But I'm really more like a researcher. I study patterns, human behavior. I find it fascinating how predictable people are once you really pay attention." I looked at the photos in the folder. Some of them were taken from inside my apartment building. Shots of me in the hallway, checking my mail, waiting for the elevator. "You've been inside my building," I whispered. "I've been everywhere you go, Jake. The gym on Saturday mornings, the grocery store where you buy those frozen dinners, the laundromat where you do your washing every other Sunday." Linda closed the folder and smiled at me in the mirror. "I probably know your life better than you do." "You're insane," I said, my hand already on the door handle. "Am I?" Linda's voice had gone cold. "Or am I just more observant than most people? See, the thing about humans is that they think they're so unpredictable, so complex. But everyone follows patterns, everyone has routines, and once you map those patterns..." She trailed off, but the implication hung in the air like a threat. "Some of my subjects have become inconvenient to track," she said finally. "When people start changing their routines too much, or when they move away, or when they start asking too many questions, well, sometimes they just disappear. Funny how often people go missing in a city this size." The car had stopped at a red light. Without thinking, I yanked the door handle and threw myself out onto the pavement. My shoulder hit the asphalt hard, but I rolled and came up running. Behind me, I heard Linda shouting something, but I didn't look back. I ran 6 blocks to a 24-hour gas station and called 911 from their payphone. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, there was no sign of Linda or her Honda Civic. They took my statement, but I could tell they thought I was just a drunk guy with an overactive imagination. When I checked my Uber account the next morning, it showed that my ride had been completed normally. 5-star rating, no complaints, like nothing had ever happened. But 3 days later, I found something slipped under my apartment door. Surveillance photos of me entering and leaving my building, taken from inside the hallway. On the back of one photo, someone had written in neat handwriting, "Patterns never really change, do they?" I moved out that weekend. I'm a registered nurse at Detroit Medical Center, and I've been working the overnight shift for 3 years now. You see a lot of strange things in a hospital at 3 a.m., not just medical emergencies, but the kind of people who come crawling out when most of the world is asleep. I thought I'd seen it all until the night I met David. It was a Tuesday in October, one of those brutally cold Michigan nights where the wind cuts right through your scrubs. I just finished a 12-hour shift in the ICU, 3 cardiac arrests, 2 overdoses, and a car accident victim who didn't make it. I was physically and emotionally drained, ready to go home to my apartment in Midtown and sleep until my next shift. The hospital parking garage is sketchy enough during the day, but at 3 a.m. it's downright terrifying. Dark corners, broken lights, and the constant echo of footsteps that might or might not belong to someone following you. I'd started taking Uber instead of risking the walk to my car alone. I requested a ride from my usual pickup spot near the main entrance. The app showed a Toyota Camry, license plate ending in 7G4, driver named David with a 4.8 rating. Standard stuff, but when the vehicle pulled up, it wasn't a Camry. It was a white van with no windows in the back and a dent in the front bumper. David rolled down the window and called out, "Maya?" "Uber for Maya?" I hesitated. The license plate was right, but this definitely wasn't the car shown in the app. "My sedan broke down earlier tonight," David explained, seeming to read my concern. "Had to borrow my work vehicle. Sorry about the confusion." He looked normal enough. Middle-aged white guy, baseball cap, clean jacket. The inside of the van was actually pretty clean too, with a passenger seat up front and what looked like a makeshift bench in the back. It was freezing outside. No other rides were available, and I just wanted to get home. "Okay," I said, climbing into the passenger seat. "Thanks for the explanation." David nodded and pulled away from the hospital. "No problem. Long shift?" 12 hours, I said, settling back and closing my eyes. "I see you. That's rough. I bet you see some crazy stuff working nights. You have no idea." Instead of taking the direct route down Woodward Avenue to my place, David turned east toward the industrial district. Old factories, abandoned warehouses, the kind of area that looks scary even in daylight. "Construction on Woodward," he explained before I could ask. "This way's actually faster right now." The van had a weird smell. Not exactly unpleasant, but sharp and chemical-like. Like cleaning products mixed with something else I couldn't identify. And I noticed there were no interior door handles on my side. The window control was missing too. "So you work nights at the hospital pretty regularly?" David asked, glancing over at me. "Same schedule every week?" "Most weeks, yeah. Tuesday through Friday, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I answered, automatically, then felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Michigan weather. Why was he asking about my schedule? Must be hard, working alone in those units late at night. Bet you know all the quiet spots in the hospital, all the places where no one would hear you scream. My eyes snapped open. "Excuse me. I mean, if there was an emergency," David said quickly. "Medical emergency. You'd know where to go for help, right?" But his tone had been wrong. Too interested, too specific. I realized we'd stopped moving, though the engine was still running. We were parked in an empty lot behind what looked like an abandoned auto parts warehouse. No streetlights, no other buildings with lights on, just darkness in every direction. "Why did we stop?" I asked, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. "Traffic back up ahead," David said, but when I looked through the windshield, I didn't see any other cars. No traffic lights, no construction signs, just empty road stretching into the darkness. David got out of the van and walked around to the back doors. I heard them open, then the sound of equipment being moved around. Metal clinking against metal, wheels rolling across the van floor. Someone else's voice, another man, discussing something about the schedule and processing the night shift. My nursing training kicked in, and I recognized some of the sounds. IV equipment. Maybe a gurney or wheelchair. Medical supplies being organized. That's when I noticed the loose panel in the van wall next to my seat. The metal was bent slightly, like it had been pried open and hastily closed. When I pressed against it, it shifted enough for me to see inside. Medical equipment, 4 bags hanging from hooks, sedatives in clearly labeled vials, and restraints. Lots of restraints, the kind used in psychiatric units to keep violent patients from hurting themselves or others. But these weren't for violent patients. They were sized for conscious, healthy adults. Adults who would fight back. I understood then why David had asked about my schedule, why he knew I worked alone, why he'd specifically targeted someone from the night shift. Healthcare workers were perfect victims. We worked isolated hours, often stayed late, and we knew enough about medical procedures to be useful for whatever this was. My hand went instinctively to the pepper spray I kept clipped inside my scrub pocket. Every nurse I knew carried some kind of protection for exactly this reason. "I think I'm going to be sick," I called out, loud enough for David to hear. "Can I step outside for some air?" The voices in the back of the van went quiet. After a moment, David appeared at my door and opened it. "Sure, but make it quick. We need to get moving soon." The moment he opened the door, I hit him with the pepper spray full in the face. David screamed and stumbled backward, his hands clutching his eyes. I didn't wait to see if the other person would come around from the back of the van. I just ran. The industrial district was a maze of empty buildings and dead-end streets, but I'd grown up in Detroit. I knew how to navigate the abandoned parts of the city. I found an unlocked door in a warehouse complex and hid inside until sunrise, listening for the sound of the van driving around looking for me. When I finally felt safe enough to call 911, the police found the van abandoned in a parking lot 3 miles away. No sign of David or whoever had been helping him. No medical equipment, no restraints, nothing that would prove what I'd seen. But the investigating officer told me something interesting. 3 other healthcare workers had reported similar experiences over the past 6 months. All nurses or technicians who worked night shifts, all picked up by drivers who seemed to know their schedules, their routines, their work locations. None of the other women had escaped. When I went back to work the next week, hospital security told me someone had been asking questions about our staff schedules. Specifically about which nurses worked alone on night shifts, which units were understaffed, and which employees took ride shares versus driving their own cars. I moved to day shift after that. Started driving myself to work, even though the parking garage still terrifies me. But sometimes I still get text messages from unknown numbers. Messages that mention my work schedule, my apartment building, my daily routines. Messages that let me know someone is still watching. And sometimes, when I'm driving home after a long shift, I see white vans in my rearview mirror, following just a little too closely, staying just a little too long behind me. I don't take Uber anymore. Ever. The most disturbing part about all 3 of these stories isn't just what happened. It's what never got resolved. Sarah's driver disappeared without a trace. Jake's stalker is still out there somewhere, building files on new victims. My would-be kidnapper was never caught, and those other missing nurses were never found. These people are still driving for rideshare companies, still picking up passengers, still turning late-night desperation into hunting opportunities. So the next time you're standing outside a hospital or bar at 3 a.m., thumb hovering over that request button, remember our stories. Check the license plate. Trust your instincts. And maybe consider calling a friend for a ride instead. Because in those dark hours when the world feels empty and dangerous, you never know who might answer that call. Thanks for listening, if you made it through the darkness.